One of the most important relationships that will occur in a person's life is the relationship within oneself. While one may think that a person should know oneself better than anyone else does, it seems based on social psychological research that the relationship a person has with oneself is much more complicated than it seems. There are many factors that can alter the way that people view themselves, and this can change over time. Two major theories that are related to social perception are the theory of attribution and the social comparison theory. The theory of attribution is defined as why a person does a certain behavior and drawing conclusions based on these behaviors. The theory of attribution has many different theories branching from it, and many other ideas are applicable to the real world. It attempts to explain how some behaviors affect others. A paper that was published that is similar to this theory was the Lasniak paper. This paper involved many studies involving the effects of bad word of mouth on specific brands. The study followed up on the consumers after hearing the word of mouth and if they had purchased that particular brand. This is helpful to know for companies because this can greatly affect reputation and sales. The social comparison theory attempts to answer three big questions examining social comparisons. This theory investigates why comparisons happen, to whom people compare themselves to, and what the effects of these comparisons are on the person. This theory is important to social psychology because it is often applicable to life situations. It is also important to understand this theory because it can affect a person's mental and physical state. These two theories are the main theories summarized in the Chatty chapters. Another big topic discussed in the Valkenburg paper as well as the Cassine chapter was self-esteem. Self-esteem is defined as how a person perceives oneself. Typically, a person has a positive or negative self-esteem, depending on if it is high or low. The differences between the genders and races have also been examined, and this research has found some interesting conclusions in terms of self-esteem. This research has brought along some new ideas to social psychology, such as the discrepancy theory, and some interesting paradoxes found among athletes. One more topic the Cassine chapter provides is the self-presentation idea. This is the way people present themselves physically to the world. There are two different types of motivations for those who use self-presentation to their advantage. One is strategic self-presentation, and the other is self-verification. It is interesting to see the differences among cultures. Self-esteem is also addressed in the Valkenburg paper in regards to young people using social media. There was a survey administered to adolescents to see the effects of social media use with friends on their self-esteem. The positive and negative feedback received from the profiles was correlated to their self-esteem. There was found to be a direct relationship with both negative and positive feedback to negative and positive self-esteem. The negative feedback received correlated to a lower self-esteem and vice versa. The results found from the study further incites debate even today. One more topic Cassine discussed is the idea of social perception. This is the idea that people do make judgments based on certain characteristics of others. The first time meeting a person, it has been found that a person will draw conclusions from the other based on how they look, their behaviors, and their body language. This chapter delves into the psychology behind deception and if people's judgments are generally correct. There are 5 main topics that will be investigated further: the social comparison theory, self-esteem, social media influence, the theory of attribution, and social perception. One of the main topics of this social perception is the social comparison theory. This is an important part of social psychology because it integrates other topics within this one. Often the reason to compare oneself to another is to make that person feel better about oneself. Derived from Chatty, Festinger states that when some people are not confident in their abilities, they tend to compare these abilities to that of others. Derived from Cassine, these answers of the big questions stated in the Chatty text. When do we compare ourselves to others? Festinger believes that this is when a person feels most vulnerable in oneself. There's also been studies through Facebook of social media comparison. It has been found that there's a correlation between high usage of Facebook and high incidence of depression. It is believed that the explanation could possibly lie within the social comparison theory derived from the Cassine text. Self-esteem is probably the largest topic in social perception. Self-esteem is how one views the self. According to the Cassine chapter, self-esteem does stay relatively stable over the course of a lifetime, but tends to be lower during adolescent and young adult years. An example of this outlined in the study illustrated in the Valkenburg paper. This study reported lower self-esteem after receiving negative feedback from friends on social media. The study also reiterates the correlation between self-esteem and well-being. If self-esteem is high, then the well-being is likely high as well. Self-esteem is an important part of social psychology because the amount of self-esteem a person has can help explain why that person behaves a certain way or perceives others a certain way. Having a good self-esteem is also correlated with having a more successful life. Another important topic to address in social psychology is the effect of social media on self-esteem. The Valkenburg paper is a prime example of how social media can be harmful to the younger generation. The results showed a lower self-esteem rating after receiving negative feedback. The reliance upon an outside source, such as social media, can be detrimental to a developing person's mind. One study conducted, shown in the Cassine chapter using Facebook, shows how college students tended to have a higher incidence of depression if they used Facebook often. While this is a positive correlation, it does not seem likely that this is a positive conclusion. While social media may have its downsides, there could be some positives. The Valkenburg paper also addresses the positive correlation between positive responses and higher self-esteem. This could be a positive conclusion drawn from the data, but none of the data can be linked to cause and effect since all of these conclusions are correlations. It is important to continue to conduct research in this area to try and find a causal relationship. The theory of attribution is one of the main theories in social perception. The theory of attribution is defined as why a person does a certain behavior and drawing conclusions based on these behaviors, derived from the chapter Chadi. There have been many different models that have been developed based on this theory, as well as different theories. The main ideas of these theories and research is to explain why certain behaviors are performed and what information is gathered from them. This theory has also been applied to real-world scenarios. The Lesenak paper gives an application of the attribution theory. A series of studies were conducted with how negative word of mouth affects companies' success. This study used attribution theory in order to understand why some consumers behaved a certain way after hearing negative characteristics about a certain brand. The results found the consumers associated with bad word of mouth with the value of the brand depending on the legitimacy of the person giving the word of mouth information. This theory is important due to its ability to be applicable to real-life situations. Social perception is the main aspect for the topic this week. This topic is all about how some perceive others in a situation. This can be related to the theory of attribution in the Chadi chapter because this theory examines why people exhibit certain behaviors, and social perception examines all behaviors shown by others. One of the main ways that people are examined are by their body language and emotions. Another similarity to the theory of attribution is self-perseverance from Cassine chapter. This means that even if a person is proven wrong about a claim, that person will still continue to believe the claim. The theory of attribution would attempt to understand this reasoning behind this belief. While social perception is a broad topic that encompasses many topics, it is an important part of social psychology to understand. Social perception is a huge part of social psychology. While many areas have been studied pertaining to this topic, there are a few that are focused on, including social comparison theory, self-esteem, the theory of attribution, social media problems, and social perception in general. The main takeaway from this topic is the way the self is seen is different from how others view that specific person. Also, the way others are perceived is evaluated through these topics, and hopefully more research will be conducted in these areas to be able to learn more. Social perception is the main term used to describe the relationship of the self and that self with other people. It focuses on thought processes, cultures, and differences in gender, and how these all affect social perception. These theories named try to explain others' behaviors through observation and through analyzing comparisons between two people or groups of people. Social comparison is an interesting topic within social perception because it involves others, but it is within the self. It affects the well-being of the person and can sometimes be helpful or detrimental. Self-esteem is a major topic within this field. It is important to understand how self-esteem can affect perception of the self and of others. It is important to know how to evaluate self-esteem level and see how the fluctuations relate to different aspects of a person's life. Social media is a new but significant factor when it comes to self-esteem. Multiple studies have found significant relationships with changes in self-esteem in social media among young people. This is a growing and unknown field, and this may be the most important way to understand problems that adolescents commonly have. There needs to be more research conducted in this area of psychology, and hopefully more significant findings can be concluded. Social perception is a growing field in the area of psychology, and it is important because of its ability to be applied to many real-life situations. This is especially true in the industrial world because it would be important for companies to learn about their consumers to better serve them with their products or services. Social perception is the understanding of others and oneself by that person, and this helps with making decisions with social interactions with others. So, social perception is a large part of social psychology.